Your brain already knows how to plan. You planned breakfast this morning. You planned your route to work. You planned around a meeting at 2 p.m. But here's what you didn't plan: the life you're living 5 years from now. That's not because you're bad at planning. It's because your brain is running a default program. And that program was built to keep you alive, not free. Strategic thinking isn't a business buzzword. It's a neurological shift. And the reason you don't use it isn't laziness. It's because your default mode network, the autopilot system that runs most of your decisions, is optimized for short-term survival, not long-term design. So you make the next move, not the next 20. You solve the fire in front of you, not the pattern that keeps starting fires. And you stay busy, exhausted, and stuck. Because busy feels productive and stuck feels like bad luck. It's not. You don't have a strategy problem. You have a wiring problem. Your brain's default mode network handles most of your moment-to-moment decisions without conscious input. It's efficient, it's automatic, and it has one job: minimize immediate threat and effort. That system is great if you're avoiding predators. It's terrible if you're trying to build wealth, relationships, or a life you actually chose. Here's the mechanism: your brain's prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for long-term planning. And strategic thought is metabolically expensive. It burns glucose, it requires effort. It competes with every other demand for your attention. So your brain defaults to the cheaper option: pattern matching. This situation looks familiar. Run program A. That's tactical thinking. Reactive, immediate, short range. Strategic thinking requires something your brain resists: sustained mental simulation. That means holding multiple future scenarios in working memory, comparing outcomes, and choosing based on second and third order consequences. Kahneman called this system 2 thinking: slow, deliberate, effortful. Most people live in system 1, fast, automatic, reactive. And the gap between the two is the gap between designing your life and just surviving it. Let me show you what this looks like in real time. You're 34, you've been at your job for 6 years. The work is fine, the pay is okay. But lately you've been feeling stuck. So you start looking at job postings. You apply to a few, you get an interview. They offer you a lateral move. Same pay, different office, slightly better title. You take it. 3 years later, you're in the exact same position. Different desk, same feeling. That's tactical thinking. Here's what strategic thinking would have looked like. You pause. You don't look at job postings. You ask a different question: why do I feel stuck? Not what job fixes this feeling, but what pattern keeps creating this feeling. You realize every job you've taken has been chosen the same way. You optimized for immediate comfort. Commute, office vibe, whether the manager seemed nice in the interview. You never asked, what skills will this role force me to develop? Or what network will this position give me access to? Or where does this position me in 5 years? Strategic thinking doesn't ask what's the next move. It asks, what position do I want to be in 20 moves from now? And what sequence of moves gets me there? That's not motivation, that's neurology. When you ask strategic questions, you're activating your dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, the region responsible for future simulation and sequential planning. When you ask tactical questions, you're running scripts from your basal ganglia, the autopilot system built for repetition, not design. Most people spend their entire lives in autopilot. Not because they're lazy, because their brain is doing what it was built to do: minimize cognitive load. Here's what happens in your brain when you think strategically, and why it's so rare. Strategic thinking requires what neuroscientists call prospective cognition, the ability to mentally simulate future states and work backward to the present. This process happens primarily in your prefrontal cortex, specifically the dorsolateral region. That's the area responsible for working memory, abstract reasoning, and what researchers call mental time travel. But here's the problem: that region is expensive. fMRI studies show that sustained strategic thinking increases metabolic demand in the prefrontal cortex by up to 20% compared to routine decision-making. Your brain interprets that cost as a threat, so it shortcuts. Instead of simulating the future, it pattern matches the past. That's your default mode network taking over. The DMN is a collection of brain regions: the medial prefrontal cortex, posterior cingulate cortex, and angular gyrus, that activate when you're not focused on a specific external task. It's your brain's screensaver, and it runs on one rule: predict based on prior experience. That's why tactical thinking feels natural. It's literally your brain's default state. Carol Dweck's research on mindset ties directly into this. People with a fixed mindset avoid the cognitive discomfort of strategic simulation. People with a growth mindset tolerate that discomfort because they've learned that effortful thinking creates new patterns, neuroplasticity in action. Every time you force your brain to simulate future consequences, instead of reacting to present triggers, you're building new neural pathways. You're literally rewiring your decision-making system. Stop. That's not metaphor, that's Hebbian learning. Neurons that fire together wire together. The more you practice strategic simulation, the less effort it requires. The cheaper it becomes, the more automatic. But most people never start, because starting feels harder than reacting. And your brain will always choose the path of least resistance, unless you consciously override it. Strategic thinking isn't a personality trait. It's a protocol, and you can install it today. Here's the system, 4 steps, each designed to hijack a specific brain mechanism. Step 1, the outcome reversal exercise. Once per week, sit down with a blank page, write the date 5 years from now at the top. Then write this sentence, I am living a life where, complete that sentence in vivid, specific detail. Not goals, not wishes, description. What you see when you wake up, how you feel in your body, the problems you've solved, the capabilities you've built. This activates your brain's prospection network, the same system that fires when you imagine future rewards. fMRI studies show that vividly imagining a positive future state triggers dopamine release in the ventral striatum, the brain's reward prediction region. You're giving your brain a target. And dopamine is the brain's way of saying, this matters, remember this. Step 2, the pattern audit. Look at the last 5 major decisions you made. Job changes, relationship moves, money choices. Write them down. Now answer this. What did I optimize for in each decision? Most people discover they optimize for the same thing every time, usually short-term comfort or fear avoidance. That's loss aversion, a well-documented bias. From Kahneman and Tversky's prospect theory, losses feel twice as painful as equivalent gains feel good. Your brain's amygdala, the threat detection system, will always prioritize avoiding loss over pursuing gain, unless you override it consciously. Once you spot your pattern, you can interrupt it. Step 3, the decision filter. Before making any significant decision, ask 3 questions out loud. What does this decision make possible 3 years from now? What skills, relationships, or positions does this create access to? If I make this choice, what becomes the next logical choice? These questions force System 2 thinking. They pull you out of reactive pattern matching and into deliberate simulation. Neurologically, you're forcing activation in your prefrontal cortex before your basal ganglia can run its autopilot script. Step 4, the weekly strategy session. Every Sunday, block 30 minutes. No phone, no distractions. Ask these 2 questions. What pattern repeated this week that I don't want? And what one decision would I make differently? If I were optimizing for 5 years, not 5 days? This is active neuroplasticity. You're training your brain to default to strategic thinking instead of tactical reaction. Repetition rewires the circuit. Within 8-12 weeks, strategic thinking stops feeling like effort. It becomes your new default. Here's what happens if you do nothing with this. Your default mode network keeps running. You keep reacting. You keep optimizing for next week, next month, next quarter, and 5 years from now. You'll be in a slightly different place, wondering why it still feels like the same place. Or you start today. You take one decision, just one, and run it through the decision filter. You write the outcome reversal, you audit the pattern, and you start wiring a brain that sees 20 moves ahead instead of 1. Subscribing to this channel isn't passive consumption. It's an active choice to interrupt your brain's autopilot. It's choosing to rewire instead of repeat. Every video on this channel is designed to give you one new circuit, one new protocol, one new question that pulls you out of default and into design. If that's the person you're becoming, hit subscribe. Not because you need more content, because you're choosing to become someone who thinks strategically, moves deliberately, and designs the life you want, instead of accepting the life your autopilot gives you. That's not motivation. That's neuroscience.